It's a part of human nature to associate an image or an emotion with a word or concept, and vice versa. There are many different examples to this. I can give you one right now. If I say something like nature, I can bet that the first thing that popped up in your mind was a tree or some kind of forest animal. Now, with Deepwoken, oh my god, bro. What is that transition? Not just with Deepwoken actually, but with video games as a whole. When you think about them, you usually think about what's the most iconic thing in that game, and usually that's just the meta. But what is Deepwoken's meta? The game's been out for a long time, and it's changed a lot, definitely, but what was the first most iconic meta in the game? I'm one of the, what feels like very few nowadays, day one players of the game. And I know very few may seem like an exaggeration, but take tutorials for example. There are tutorials on things that have been in the game for well over a year at this point, and they'll still get a lot of views. That's because some of the newer players that wouldn't be too aware of these things will still try to find the most recent video about the topic. Take this video I made for example. Hero swords have been in the game since before release, and this still got quite a bit of traction. I bring this up just to show how there are substantially more new players in the game than there are OGs, but also to make the point that there were almost no tutorials for us back then. People had to try and figure out everything there was to the game on their own. Things like luck, which I'm sure many of you haven't heard in a long time, weren't even things people were aware existed in the game. And of course, eventually we did get tutorials on these things or just videos talking about it. But that's also what makes this build so iconic. Coming from an era of no help, no tutorials, and finally getting them. As a community, players were revolving around many different things for the first time, and this was one of those major ones. The game's presence had almost no PvE aspect to it. Of course, people were trying to learn how to fight NPCs, but PvP was the main focus, and this is what PvP revolved around, if I can just stop beating around the bush. It was the Azure Flames Shattered Katana build. This was the first major and popular build that the game witnessed, and at first that was a good thing, but eventually the build got a lot of negative connotations with it. A lot of them were well deserved, but just as much weren't. Think about it this way, there are a lot of annoying or just straight up bad players in the game, but if every player was going for the exact same builds, then all those bad and annoying players would be lumped into one group. This one build would be the source of every negative connotation the game had. But like I said before, some of them really were deserving, like the stereotype that everyone with a Royal Pathfinder probably went Azure Flame Shattered Katana, and they were really bad, but so annoying at the same time. I swear it was just a guaranteed thing. But this build served as the basis of what could be iconic in the game, and I decided to recreate it for the fun of it. And although I only did it for fun, it was everything but that. I took this thing into Chime and dropped to sub 600 elo, and it's so terrible. I wanted to try to modernize the build and make it a little different from how it was back then. Obviously some of its mantras are timeless like Ash Lamb, so I had to get those in. Rising Flame as well, but there are also a lot of new mantras I got to add too. Especially due to the fact that they finally gave Flame Charm new mantras. I don't know why it took them so long. It was the only attunement that didn't get any new mantras from release, but they added, what, like 3? I have them all on the build, and it's actually really, really good. Mantras like Flaming Scourge are pretty much must-haves now. Others, like Relentless Flame, although they aren't too good at PvP realistically, still really, really good for PvE. Like if it came down to a ranking, it would easily be in top 3. And there are mantras that are somewhere between both categories. Like Flame Ballista, for example. They added that in reference to Sukuna's new fire arrow move that they just showed off in the anime. And at first it wouldn't seem like it has any good place in PvP, but it's actually not too bad either. Whenever an enemy tries to distance themselves, you could easily just throw that out at them. And although there's a lot of time to react to it, they have to get the parry window down perfectly. it could easily end up being a block break or just a free hit. You can also use it in mix-ups too, and it ends up making it a lot better. Other mantras that have helped to boost the build are still really good. Like I said before, Ash Slam and Rising Flame are still goated, but Fireforge and Fireblade of course are still really good too. Fireblade almost had instant guard break. Not instant to be honest, but still really good. It can be on the same par as Strong Left realistically, and Fireforge of course, you know, all the talents you can get with it. It's a must-have to have on any Flame Charm build. I threw in other mantras like Flame Assault just to see how they would play out in the build, and I actually really enjoyed it, especially with the Wayward on it. It ended up being really fun. For the drip, I had to bring back one of my favorite outfits from one of my really old progressions. I'm pretty sure I started it like a year and a half ago, but the drip still holds up today. As cool as the build turned out to be, I honestly really wouldn't recommend it unless you really know what you're doing. I just wanted to make this build for the video real quick, just because I was thinking about how a really old build from OG Deep would play out today. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below, but that's pretty much it. That'll be all for now. I'm glad to spend this time that I did have with all of you. If you enjoyed, please feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe right now to join the channel. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.